ask them. They ask all the people that have a lot of energy to scrounge for the money that really don't know what they're talking about. But science, there's a problem with science today. And the original literature is being forgotten, and it's not being respected and looked at and cited and published properly. But when I want to get questions of what Tonga looked like or Southeast Sulawesi looked like, I go to someone I try to look for the people that are in their 90s to find, because they know and they remember. And they'll point me in a direction if they can't remember certain things and tell me where to go and find out information. Archives, the library is a forgotten place. Everything is the internet, quick. Right. And remember, the internet can be good, and Columbia University has been doing a great job of getting me journals from the 1920s and 1930s, but not as fast as I want it. So when I want a paper and I want to know stuff, I go into the library and I get the old stuff. And I sit there and read it, because all of these original ideas and observations took place at that time. Yes. Sorry to rant on that, but science.
That's great.
On that same note, how accurate in his thinking or writing or speech making is Al Gore?
A lot of, remember, he's not a scientist. He's just a really smart guy that's trying to portray what we geeks are telling him. Now, of course, he's going to color it up a little bit, but the basic premise is right. And the way he colors it, the press goes to it, the Rush Limbaughs go to it, and they strangle him and make him look like a jerk. But overall, his basic message is correct. And the data that when he went up there and he showed stuff, he got that data from the pioneers.
Well, his basic message is at least gotten people to focus on the message.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, was he a jerk at the way he explained some of it? Probably. I mean, I liked the guy, and I liked him because when I testified back in '98, he understood photosynthesis. Now, when I tried to explain, when I go to testify during the Bush administration, I wasn't talking to science advisors. I was talking to economists and oil CEOs, and I'm like, where's the room full of scientists? So, you know, we threw up our hands during the last 8 years because we weren't talking. The experts, the people that were regulating on climate and on ecosystem health, didn't have a science background, and they hired scientists who gave them what they wanted to hear. It was really damaging what happened in the last 10 years. But you know, Al Gore did sensationalize some things. Yes.
Another question. Mm-hmm. You gave us a good large picture, but here in Oyster Bay, which is sort of known for oysters, what happens when the temperature changes here, or chemicals like phosphates from people's lawns and fertilizer and every other thing you can name, and runoff?
I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for taking me there.
In other words, the local scene, the local harbor, the smaller ecosystem.
Thank you so much for bringing
that up. And what effect does all this bigger picture have even on that?
Pat Aiken sent me a great article from a paper that, everybody know Pat Aiken? Friends of the Bay?
Yeah.
She sent me a great paper that was published on the impacts of increased CO2 on shellfish. And I've been looking at papers before she sent that to me. I'm a sort of cell biologist, pathologist, so I'm really interested in cells. But one thing I can tell you that's not debated is that increased CO2 takes the immune system of the shellfish and weakens it. It doesn't make enough white blood cells to fight infection. So increased CO2 lowers the hemolymph production in shellfish, crabs, and lobsters. So in a high CO2 world, let's forget about this whole global issue. Let's take it to where you're saying taking it. And I agree with you. Locally, their immune systems are not functioning the way they should be. I work with Vibrios, which is a bacteria that has wiped out a large population of shrimp, prawns, and oysters. There's dermo and DMX parasites that you guys have heard about. But Vibrio is a big aquaculture pathogen that I'm very much interested in because it's attacking corals and it attacks humans. So I have this nice little web that's forming with Vibrio, and you have Vibrio here. There was a cholera outbreak a couple of years ago too, in Bayside. Cholera can happen here, but bacterial pathogens, chemicals weaken immune systems. In a nutshell, in summary, chemicals can weaken immune systems of shellfish. And that's my, not theory, but That's my science and how I know it. And one of the problems that's affecting the shellfish here in Long Island is the weakened immune systems, not able to fight infection, as well as a lot of other stressors like just nitrogen and phosphorus runoff, depletion of oxygen because you have algal blooms that are smothering the places where they make babies and attach their abyssal threads to.
Is some of that same thing attributable to what's going on with lobsters south of the Cape, as opposed to Maine?
You know, the whole lobster theory, but I think it's, you know, there's limp lobster disease, there's a wide shell weakening disease. There's so many different things that are happening to these. Let's forget about looking for one smoking gun. It's synergistic, you know, from temperature to chemical pollution to fertilizers. But I must say, Long Island, 5 boroughs, there are not too many places that I can say that things are coming back. And in the 5 boroughs, I know, because of sewage treatment, I noticed since the 60s, when I was a kid running in the parks in Queens and Brooklyn, I don't smell rotten eggs on the coast anymore.
Oh, Oyster Bay has improved enormously.
Yes, and let's hope it, you know, with people, some of the folks that have leaky septic tanks, they need to really change their septic tanks and spend that 10 grand and clean up because they're affecting the bay. In Douglaston, you have a whole good old boy network that don't want to change their septic tanks, and it's leaking into the bay, and it's, you know, no one's enforcing making them because no one can trace whose septic tank is leaking. In Cape Cod, we do it. We go around with dye tracers, and we find out where the sources of nutrients are coming from, and we make them go to Title V and change the septic tanks. But in here in New York, they're not enforcing it like they should in places that have septics.
With the dye tracers, do they go house to house?